Okay, first things first, let's go ahead and open up Morpheus Photomorpher. And we have just the free version, so you have to be really careful on this. A couple computers have the full version, so you won't have this pop-up screen, but most of us have the free version. So just say close at this point, and then it's reminding you that it's only $29.95. All right, and we're actually just going to skip through all this, click close, and then we're going to create a new morph layout. So say next. First thing I want us to do is actually to load the pictures. Now before you get to this step, you've got to ensure that your pictures are loaded correctly or cropped correctly. Your pictures that you're going to be using for this first step are going to be on the student data files. So you'll say student data files, Cunningham, multimedia, and we're in the Morpheus. There's 4 in here, so you can actually just copy this folder and put it into your folder. So go ahead and pause and do that now. Okay, once you have the pictures that you are going to morph from one picture into another, you need to crop them to make sure that they're the same aspect ratio. If you go from a landscape to a portrait or a portrait to a landscape, it's just going to be harder on you. So you'll need to go into Photoshop and you're going to open the girl and the dog. So the girl folder and the dog folder. You're going to need to open those in Photoshop. So I'm going to go get those. All right, now they're really little just because we're following a tutorial, so we're just going to have to make do. But we are going to crop these down just to make sure that they're in the same proportion. So mine, they're pretty close if you can kind of look. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the first one. I'm just going to crop it freeform. And I'll get all the little yellows out of it, and then I'm going to accept. And then I'm going to go to the image size and determine what image size it is. So mine, I cropped mine down to 152 by 114 pixels. So I'm not really sure what you did, but that's what I did on mine. So go to the second one. Let's see, what was it? It was 152 by 114. So I'm going to go to girl, and I'm going to set my constraints to 152 pixels, px, by 114 px. And now when I crop, it will only let me do that proportion, so that way it'll match. I'm going to make sure I get as much of this as I can. Okay, so now they match, and I just save them. And I'm done with Photoshop for now. So you got to make sure, go ahead and pause and make sure you do that now, that both of your pictures are the same proportion. All right, so now in Morpheus, we're going to load the 2 pictures. And I'm going to start with the dog on the left. So I just click Load Picture. And then I'm going to go to my folder. And I'm going to put in, on the left, I'm going to put in the dog. And then on the right, naturally, we're going to put in the girl. It gives you some tips right here, and I think it would be a good idea for you to read them, but I'm going to go over most of these tips. So go ahead and say finish. All right, so now, and we're not going to upgrade. Okay, so now we can see that I've got a picture, and I'm going to be morphing it into this picture. This is my start, and this is my end. Now you need to be really careful. This is a free version, and we can only preview it so many times. So at this point, just let it run over and over and over again. So that way it'll, you won't have to render your times. Now we're going to change the timeline a bit. So go to timeline options, and see where it says on our frames per second and on our loop morph, I'm on the timeline options. We're going to change the, well, we're going to leave it at loop forever, but we're going to change it to both ways. That way it'll go into what we want and go backwards, into what we want and go backwards. And then frames per second, it's really fast right now. So we want less frames per second, so we're going to go down to 8 so that way it'll actually just slow it down while we're working on it. So you can see it's kind of slowing it down a bit. The other options it wants you to do are some morph options. This is what you have to do for your assignment. So if you'll go to morph options, we're going to hold it for several seconds at start. I think 5 seconds at start and 5 seconds at end. And then go ahead and say OK. So it'll just slow it down a bit. All right, so let's go ahead and get working on some of these things. The first thing you need to do, and I'm going to zoom in a bit on my dog to the left, and I'm going to zoom in on my girl. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to add dots. Now what you want to do is look for commonality points. So obviously the eyes and the nose are commonality points. So let's start with the left eye. We're going to, on the dog, we're going to add in dots to outline his eye. So we've added in 7 dots, and you can see that the corresponding dots are over here. Now what we need to do to actually make it morph correctly is we need to move these dots to match her eye. Now you'll see as I've clicked, like this green one is the one I have clicked on right now, but over here the dogs on the top right of the dog's eye, I have that one chosen as well. So you want to make sure that they match up pretty good. And we're just going to move the dots to match what I've done off to the left. Okay, so you can already see it's starting to take shape here. It's morphing into the eye, and it's going from the dog's eye to the girl's eye to the dog's eye. Okay, so let's do the right eye then. Let's move to the dog, and let's add some dots around the dog's right eye. There's no rhyme or reason to how many that you use, but where the rhyme or reason comes is the moving of the dots. And I actually put this one a little bit too high. So on the girl's off to the right, I'm going to move the center of her eye and then just kind of work my way around. And I always want to make sure that everything looks good over here. Make sure that I'm not doing something crazy. So for example, if I put this down here, even though it should go at the bottom of her eye, let's say I put it down here, look what it does to my morph over here. It really screws it up because it's trying to blend those pixels together. So I'm going to move it back where it should, and everything looks a lot better. Okay, so you want to play with it till it's just right, and you can see the eyes are morphing right now. Okay, so let's do some other points of commonality. Another point of commonality would be the nose. So let's do some around the nose. And it's going to be a little bit different. Obviously, we're going from a dog to a girl. So we want to stick kind of with the nostrils and the snout. So we're going to put 2 dots for the nostrils, and then we're going to do a long line for the nose. So now we'll come over here to the girl to move the dots. The first white dot is her left nostril, and the second black dot right here is the right nostril. And then we'll just take these line that we created and we'll just go down the snout, well, the dog's snout, but the girl's nose. And you can see that it's already making their noses start to blend. Okay, so then we'll just come in and we'll do some more. I'm going to do the mouth, and I'm just going to pick 4 dots for the mouth, and then we'll move them to match just the middle of the girl's lips. And we have to obviously extend these a bit because the dog's mouth is much smaller than the girl's mouth. So, and then again, we can see what it's doing right here. It's morphing with the mouth.